What happens when a beloved country music legend sits down for what should be a routine interview, only to find himself facing the most disrespectful treatment of his entire career? What happens when decades of professionalism collide with modern television arrogance? Today we're diving into the shocking confrontation that left Joy Behar storming off her own show after Willie Nelson delivered the most devastating verbal takedown in daytime television history. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment, because this story will leave you speechless. The studio lights were blazing hot that Tuesday morning as Willie Nelson settled into the familiar guest chair on The View. At 90 years old, the country music icon had done thousands of interviews, from Johnny Carson to David Letterman. But something felt different today. The energy in the room was tense, and Joy Behar seemed unusually agitated even before the cameras started rolling. "We're back in 30 seconds, the floor manager announced, and Willie adjusted his signature braids while reviewing his mental notes about his new album and upcoming tour dates. He'd been looking forward to this appearance, especially since The View had a massive audience that might not typically listen to country music. Joy Behar shuffled through her note cards with visible irritation. "I still don't understand why we're giving this much time to someone whose music peaked in the 70s, she muttered to her co-hosts, apparently forgetting that Willie was sitting just a few feet away with perfect hearing. Whoopi Goldberg shot her a warning look. "Joy, he's right there." "Oh, please, like he doesn't know his relevance expired decades ago," Joy replied with a dismissive wave. Willie's weathered face remained calm, but his eyes sharpened. In all his years in show business, he'd encountered difficult personalities, but rarely such blatant disrespect before an interview even began. "And we're live in 5, 4, 3, the floor manager counted down with his fingers. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi began warmly. "We're here with country music legend Willie Nelson, who's just released his 73rd studio album. Willie, thank you for being here." Thank you for having me, Whoopi. "It's always a pleasure," Willie responded in his characteristic gentle drawl. Joy immediately jumped in without waiting for the natural flow of conversation. "So, Willie, let's be honest here. 73 albums? Don't you think you're just recycling the same old material at this point? I mean, how many times can you sing about trucks and heartbreak?" The other co-hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah Haynes cleared her throat nervously, while Alyssa Farah Griffin looked down at her notes. Willie's expression remained pleasant, but there was steel in his voice. "Well, Joy, I appreciate your question, though I think you might be confusing me with a stereotype. My new album actually explores themes of social justice, environmental consciousness, and spiritual growth." "Oh, come on," Joy interrupted with a laugh that bordered on cruel. "You're 90 years old, singing about social justice. Isn't it time to retire and let younger, more relevant artists take the spotlight?" The audience began to murmur. This wasn't the respectful tone they expected on a show that typically celebrated veteran entertainers. "I find it interesting," Willie said slowly, "that you'd suggest someone should stop pursuing their passion based on their age. Some might call that ageist." Joy's face flushed red. "Ageist? I'm just being realistic. Your generation had your time. This is the 21st century. Cooting onside. Everyone 40 known. Cooting onside. Cooting onside. Cooting onside. Cooting onside. And yet here I am," Willie replied calmly. "Still creating, still touring, still connecting with audiences of all ages. Last month I played for 40,000 people in Austin, and I'd estimate half of them were under 30. That's probably just nostalgia tourism," Joy shot back dismissively. Whoopi tried to intervene. "Willie, tell us about the collaboration with Billie Eilish on your new album." But Joy wasn't finished. "Wait. You collaborated with Billie Eilish? That poor girl probably had no idea what she was getting into. Did you even understand her music, or were you just trying to stay relevant by association?" The studio fell silent except for the hum of the cameras. Willie's band members, sitting in the front row of the audience, shifted uncomfortably. This was becoming painful to watch. Willie leaned forward slightly, his voice still measured but carrying a new weight. Joy, I've been in this business for over 60 years. I've worked with everyone from Ray Charles to Snoop Dogg, from Dolly Parton to Norah Jones. Collaboration isn't about staying relevant. It's about respecting the artistry in others and finding common ground through music. Oh please, Joy scoffed. Those collaborations were probably just charity cases. These young artists felt sorry for you. The audience was now audibly uncomfortable. Someone in the back called out, "That's enough, Joy." Alyssa tried to redirect. "Willie, your advocacy for farmers has been incredible over the years with Farm Aid." Joy immediately hijacked the conversation again. "Farm Aid? Don't get me started on that. You've been beating that dead horse for 40 years. Maybe if farmers actually adapted to modern agriculture instead of relying on handouts from has-been musicians, they wouldn't need charity concerts." This comment struck a nerve that went beyond personal insults. Willie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Farm Aid wasn't just a cause for him. It was a calling that had helped save thousands of family farms across America. "Joy," Willie said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "I think you might want to be careful about dismissing the struggles of American farmers. These are people who feed our nation, often at great personal sacrifice. Spare me the Heartland lecture, Willie. This isn't 1985. Get with the times." Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. The production team behind the cameras was frantically gesturing, but Joy seemed oblivious to the disaster she was creating. Willie sat back in his chair, studying Joy with the patience of someone who had dealt with difficult people his entire life. "You know, Joy, I've been on a lot of television shows over the years. I've been interviewed by people who disagreed with me, people who didn't understand my music, even people who didn't particularly like me. But I've never encountered someone so determined to be disrespectful to a guest." "Disrespectful?" Joy laughed harshly. "I'm just asking the tough questions that everyone else is too polite to ask. Someone needs to tell you that your time is up. And you've appointed yourself to that position? Somebody has to. The music industry is too scared to hurt your feelings." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators were getting tighter shots, sensing that something significant was building. Willie's band members were whispering among themselves, and one of them was shaking his head in disbelief. Whoopi made another attempt to save the interview. "Willie, let's talk about your guitar. Trigger. That's such an iconic instrument." But Joy couldn't help herself. "That old guitar? Honestly, it looks like it should be in a museum, not on a stage. How can you even play something that beat up?" Willie's hand instinctively moved toward his guitar, which was resting beside his chair. The instrument had been with him for over 50 years, bearing the scars and wear marks of decades of music making. "This guitar," Willie said quietly, "has been with me through every song I've written, every stage I've played, every moment of joy and sorrow in my life. It's not beat up, Joy. It's seasoned." "Seasoned?" Joy snorted. "It's falling apart. Just like your career." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had gone too far. Willie looked at Joy for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he began to smile. That smile wasn't what anyone expected. It wasn't angry or defensive. It was the smile of someone who had just made a decision. Someone who had reached the end of their patience, with grace intact, but boundaries firmly established. "You know what, Joy?" Willie said, his voice carrying a new tone that made everyone in the studio lean forward. "I think we need to have a real conversation here. Not the fake television conversation you've been trying to force, but an honest one." Joy rolled her eyes. "Oh, great. Here comes the folksy wisdom." "No, here comes the truth," Willie replied, his smile never wavering. "You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to tear down a 90-year-old man on national television. You've insulted my music, my age, my collaborators, my causes, and now my guitar. I'm curious. What exactly do you think you're accomplishing? I'm doing journalism, Joy shot back. I'm asking the questions that matter. Willie chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and cutting. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to humiliate a guest to make yourself feel important. The audience was now completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the rafters. I don't need to make myself feel important, Joy snapped. I've been doing television longer than most people have been alive. And yet, Willie said thoughtfully, in all my years in entertainment, I've never seen someone work so hard to make themselves look small. Joy's face went from red to purple. Excuse me? You heard me correctly. You're sitting here trying to diminish someone else's lifetime of work. And all you're really doing is showing everyone watching what kind of person you are. Whoopi tried to jump in. Willie, maybe we should. No, Whoopi, Willie said gently but firmly. Joy wanted an honest conversation, so let's have one. Joy, you've made it clear that you think I'm irrelevant, that my music doesn't matter, that my causes are outdated. But here's what I find fascinating. You seem to know an awful lot about my career for someone who thinks it's worthless. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Willie continued. You mentioned my collaborations with young artists. You brought up Farm Aid. You know about my 73 albums. That's quite a bit of knowledge about someone whose time is supposedly up. There is Ram. Gone. I do my research, Joy said defensively. Or, Willie suggested, maybe you've been listening longer than you want to admit. Maybe there's something about this old, irrelevant music that keeps drawing you back. That's ridiculous. Willie leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed now. Is it? Because I've noticed something interesting about people who go out of their way to attack artists they claim not to care about. They're usually fighting something inside themselves. Don't psychoanalyze me, old man. The insult hit the air like a slap, and several audience members audibly gasped. Sarah Haynes actually covered her face with her hands. Willie's eyebrows raised slightly. Old man? Well, I suppose that's progress. At least now you're being direct about your bias, instead of hiding behind fake journalism. It's not bias, it's reality. You're old, your music is old, and your time is over. And yet here I am, on your show, promoting my 73rd album that debuted at #1 on the country charts last week. Willie's voice remained maddeningly calm. Funny how irrelevant artists manage to top the charts. Joy was clearly flustered now. The country charts aren't real music charts. The studio erupted. Several audience members stood up, shouting their disagreement. One man yelled, "That's enough, lady!" A woman near the front called out, "Shame on you!" Willie held up his hand, and somehow, miraculously, the crowd quieted down. The power of that simple gesture, the respect it commanded, was not lost on anyone in the room. "It's all right, folks," Willie said to the audience. "Joy has a right to her opinion, even if it's rooted in ignorance." Ignorance? Joy practically shrieked. Yes. Ignorance. You just dismissed an entire genre of music that has influenced everything from rock and roll to hip-hop. You insulted millions of fans who find meaning and joy in country music. And you did it all while demonstrating that you don't actually understand what you're talking about. Alyssa finally found her voice. Willie, your influence on music is undeniable. Artists from every genre cite you as an inspiration. Thank you, Alyssa. That's kind of you to say. Willie turned back to Joy. But I don't think Joy is interested in discussing musical influence or cultural impact. I think she's more interested in performing cruelty for entertainment. I'm not being cruel, Joy protested. I'm being honest. Are you? Let me ask you something, Joy. When you go home tonight and look at yourself in the mirror, are you going to be proud of how you treated a guest today? Are you going to feel good about spending national television time trying to hurt someone's feelings? Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She clearly hadn't expected this line of questioning. Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? Willie continued. You thought you could use your platform to make an old man feel bad about himself. You thought you could embarrass me, diminish me, maybe get a viral moment out of my humiliation. That's not what I was doing. Then explain to me what you were doing. Explain to these people watching at home why you thought it was appropriate to attack a guest who came here in good faith to talk about his new music. Joy looked around the studio desperately. Her co-hosts were studying their notes. The audience was staring at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. The production crew behind the cameras looked mortified. I was asking legitimate questions about relevance in the music industry, she said weakly. Willie nodded slowly. Legitimate questions. I see. So when you said my collaborators were charity cases, that was a legitimate question? When you mocked farmers struggling to save their land, that was journalism? When you called my guitar falling apart, that was professional inquiry? Each question hit like a precision strike. Joy's defensiveness was crumbling, and she was starting to realize how she must look to everyone watching. You're twisting my words, she said. Am I? Let's review what you actually said. Willie's voice took on the tone of a patient teacher. You said I was recycling old material. You said I should retire and let younger artists have the spotlight. You said young artists only work with me out of pity. You called Farm Aid a dead horse and dismissed farmers as people seeking handouts. You said my guitar belongs in a museum and my career is falling apart. Did I miss anything? The recap was devastating in its simplicity. Hearing her own words laid out so clearly, Joy seemed to shrink in her chair. I was making points about the industry, she mumbled. No, Joy. You were being mean. There's a difference between critical analysis and personal attacks, and you crossed that line in the first 30 seconds of this interview. Sarah Haynes finally spoke up. Willie, your grace under pressure is remarkable. Thank you, Sarah. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not upset about Joy's opinion of my music. People are entitled to their taste. What concerns me is the gleeful cruelty with which she's expressed it. Joy's face was now cycling through various shades of red and purple. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't being cruel. Willie turned to face her directly. Joy, let me tell you something that might help you in the future. When you attack someone's life's work with obvious pleasure, when you mock their age and diminish their achievements, when you insult things that are deeply meaningful to them, that's cruelty. And doing it on television doesn't make it journalism. It makes it public humiliation. The weight of his words settled over the studio like a heavy blanket. Joy opened her mouth to respond. But Willie wasn't finished. And here's what really bothers me, Joy, Willie continued, his voice gaining strength. You've built a career on claiming to speak for the underdog, for the marginalized, for people who need a voice. But today, you used your platform to attack someone you perceived as vulnerable because of their age. That's not brave journalism. That's bullying. Joy's composure finally cracked completely. How dare you call me a bully? I've fought for civil rights, women's rights, every progressive cause there is. And yet here you are, demonstrating ageism on national television, Willie replied. How do you reconcile those two things? I'm not ageist. I just think you should know when to step aside. For who? For you? Because you think you deserve the spotlight more than I do? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Joy's face contorted with rage. I've earned my place in this industry. I don't need some washed-up cowboy telling me about my career. The insult was the final straw. The audience erupted in angry shouts. Apologize! Someone yelled. That's horrible! Shouted another. Willie stood up slowly, his guitar in his hand. The simple action commanded immediate silence. Joy, he said quietly, I came here today to talk about music. about bringing people together, about finding common ground in difficult times. Instead, you've chosen to demonstrate everything that's wrong with modern discourse. You've been disrespectful, cruel, and frankly, embarrassing to yourself and this show. Don't lecture me, Joy screamed, jumping to her feet. I don't have to sit here and take this from some has-been nobody. Whoopi's face went white. Joy, stop. But Joy was beyond reason now. You want to know the truth? Your music was never that good. You got lucky in the 70s, and you've been coasting ever since. And now you're just a pathetic old man trying to stay relevant. The studio fell into shocked silence. Even the camera operators stopped moving. Willie looked at Joy for a long moment, then shook his head sadly. You know, in 90 years on this earth, I've learned that when someone attacks you this viciously, it usually says more about them than about you. He turned to address the audience and cameras directly. Folks, I want to thank you for your kindness today. Music is supposed to bring people together, and I hope that's what we can focus on moving forward. Joy's face was now purple with rage. Don't you dare dismiss me! I'm talking to you! Willie turned back to her. His expression filled with something that looked almost like pity. Joy, I think you need to ask yourself why you're so angry at a 90-year-old man who just wanted to talk about his new album. What's really eating at you? Nothing's eating at me. I just can't stand fake, humble acts. There's nothing fake about treating people with respect. You might want to try it sometime. Alf. That was the final blow. Joy